time to announce one of the biggest IT partnerships that is going to be held with TSSE. I'm hereby inviting Mr. Aravind, the President of Cisco, and General Kocher to come ahead and sign the MOU.
स्किल डेव्हलपमेंट आहे ना काउन्सिल त्यांना 5 कोटी लोकांची पाहिजे 10 वर्षात.
Many more to come in the future. Thank you, sirs. Using ICT, banks and insurance companies are trying to meet the RBI guidelines on financial literacy and financial inclusion. But we must realize that banking for the unbanked population in a country like ours is a challenge and an opportunity. This session, moderated by Mr. Monish Shah, Director, Deloitte Consulting, and the members in the panel are Mr. Vaibhav Varshne, Executive VP, Financial Inclusion Yes Bank, Mr. Ravindra Deshmukh, MD, UPass India, Mr. Karthik Nagarajan, Director, Global Delivery, Avaya, Mr. Chandrasekhar Deshpande, Leader, GCTME India Global Center of Competence, IBM. I now invite Mr. Monish Shah to deliver the opening remarks and commence the third panel discussion.
Very warm good afternoon to every one of you. I know that we're running late, so we'll try and come straight to the heart of the matter. And I know it's a very difficult session as well, so we'll try as much as we can to eliminate for you. So to begin with, to sort of set the context as to where we are in the financial services space and how important is financial inclusion in driving the growth of financial services, and then again, how important is the role of technology likely to be in providing the backbone for this growth. It's important to understand the context. It's very heartening to see that today there are close to about 25 or 26 players who have put in their application for the new bank license. Taking on an average, because a few of them are large corporates, a few of them are existing players, but taking on an average that there's 1,000 crore capital which players are pledging, on an average, what we are seeing right now is that there's an expression of interest or a subscription money on the table, which is to the tune of 25,000 crores, committed to sort of put the banking sector back on the growth. What's also heartening to know is this, that RBI by design has said that this new wave of banking license is going to come at the back of financial inclusion. So there are specific fine prints which the RBI has stated that 25% of the branches have to be in rural area. It has to be core banking. And then there's a gradation of tier 1 to tier 6 and how the entire evaluation will be done. A specific item of evaluation is that each and every player has to submit their plan for financial inclusion. RBI does that for existing players as well, but as you are going to set out for your licensing application, the connotation is different, that how robust is your business model, how sustainable it is, and how you're going to build the financial inclusion agenda as a part of your overall business strategy. Now that is going to be a differentiating factor for the evaluation of licenses and then obviously getting those licenses. It's also heartening to know, and we've advised about 4 players of the list of the 26, 25, depending on who's in and who's out. So 4 players, we've advised them on the application and their business plan. And each one of them has got a very, very strong story, turning the traditional model almost upside down and focusing on financial inclusion, focusing on rural markets, focusing on unbanked markets. So my sense is this, that technology today is going to change the game of how banking is being perceived and how it's being delivered in this country. And probably the next 3 years, we'll see the industry transforming itself and newer technologies giving rise to newer products, newer delivery channels, and obviously newer paradigms. Very quickly, what are the forces which are going to change the face of the Indian banking industry? And I'm going to keep it very brief because I would rather that we hear from the esteemed panelist. But what I think is that the Indian financial services is at an inflection point, and from the demand side of the equation, there are some forces which are likely to make this entire growth scenario into a perfect storm. So what are those elements? So all of us know that the infrastructure spending is something which is lagging behind, and there are planning commission reports. The estimates vary from $500 billion to $1 trillion, but that's the size of investment which the country requires, and that's just in the 5 years, over the next 5 years. So this calls for a tremendous amount of capital, and it's got its own story behind where that money is going to come from, how the savings are going to be harnessed, what products and services you're going to make it appealing for the customers to raise this kind of funding capacity. The unbanked, and everybody knows the story about the unbanked. I won't talk a lot on that, but the numbers are there for everyone, right? 50 to 60% of the population is unbanked, 40 according to some, but the numbers vary. What's very important is from the demographic dividend perspective. India is getting younger, and by 2020, we believe that the average age of Indian is going to be 29, and there was another estimate which said that close to 200 million young population between 18 to 25 are likely to join workforce in the next decade or so. So that's 20 crore people who are going to join the employment cycle and are suddenly going to be bankable for the first time, assuming that the moment you start earning, then you start your journey as a financial services customer. So that is again going to change, and this younger generation is going to have a very different need and a very different appetite for banking services and a very different propensity to use technology to access the banking services. There are other aspects as well, from the demand from the MSME sector and increasing globalization. But basically what I'm saying here is that this is going to change the face in which, today the way you're recognizing banks. Some interesting concepts which we are working on, for example, is a branchless bank. So it's just an online bank. We're looking at various models as well. Let me come very quickly to that. So this was the traditional way banking was perceived, and branch, of course, was the king. This is 90s and early 2000s, and you can see from the transaction intensity to the sales and service intensity, branch was right at the most important distribution channel. And what we're seeing is that the role of the branch is diminishing, and we're looking at various alternate channels which are coming into play. Social media is also playing its own part, be it internet, be it mobile, be it ATM, or in Indian context, a very Jugadu channel, which is the assisted channel where you use the last mile technology, but then there's still a person out there. Very interesting conversation we were having yesterday with a technology provider. We worked out innovation lab, where this is again in the context of how the future banking transaction services is going to look like, where it's a simulated environment and the customer walks into the lab and there's just one kiosk, nobody is present, and he can do just about any transaction. So there is obviously voice facility, but there's also a video where there is a banking executive who's sitting at the call center receiving the video call, but the quality is so clear that it's as if you are conducting the transaction in person. And still the question was that it has to be an assisted model, because you can't trust the customers alone with a pair of gears in India, right? You could just walk away with the keyboard maybe. So anyway, what this calls for is that as you see this transformation, the technology needs to be scalable as well as cost effective. And I think that that's going to be the single most differentiating factor going forward. As the technology brings down the cost, the marginal cost of acquiring a customer and the marginal cost of servicing a customer is going to come down significantly lower. And hence, that's going to be a big game changer. I think let me pause here, and obviously as we go along, we'll have the Q&A session, and there'll be far more insights which we'll be discussing. And let me actually open the...
Mr. Ravindra Deshmukh, MD of UPass India. Mr. Vaibhav Vashni, Executive VP from Yes Bank. Mr. Karthik Nagarajan, Director Global Delivery Center, Avaya, and Mr. Chandrasekhar Deshpande from IBM. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for a very fruitful session. This fourth panel will be also webcast like the inaugural panel.